Hi, in today's video I'm going to be covering switching to Nixos and Home Manager from Ubuntu or another Linux distribution. Now the reason I'm switching from Ubuntu is because I had ZFS on root set up on Ubuntu a couple of years ago, and it looks like Ubuntu are removing the installer for ZFS from the Ubuntu installer. So I decided to wipe my system and pick another distro. And I've been using Home Manager for a while, so I decided to use NixOS and Home Manager for my new system. What I'm going to do is go through some of the advantages of this and some of the things you might not have thought about that actually crop up using this system. So NixOS is a system that has a different file layout than any other Linux distribution that allows it to have features like rolling back to different configurations. And the way it does this is by using text files to configure the system and install all your packages and set everything up. And what you can also do is use Home Manager to actually configure a lot of things on the desktop side. So for example, this version of Firefox here, a lot of this was actually pre-configured. I can actually specify all the extensions I wanted to install, come through all these settings, configure all these settings from a text file. What I'm going to do is actually show you what NixOS is like and some of the pros and cons and some of the little gotchas that I come across. So first of all, this is actually GNOME, and as you'll see here, this is a stripped down version of GNOME. It's completely debloated, and the way we can do that is through the NixOS config that allows you to specify which packages from GNOME you actually want to install or not. So as you can see here, I've got Emacs, Firefox, OBS Studio, and just the general utilities that you'd need like settings, dconf, tweaks, password keys, that sort of thing. And in here we've got the Nix manual, MPV, and we also have the nvidia settings, and I want to go through actually how you enable that, because it is so much easier than actually doing it on Ubuntu. So this is a stripped down version of GNOME, and what I'm going to do is actually come across and show you the configuration for this. So what I've got here is 4 repositories. I've set up NixOS and Home Manager on a 2011 Macbook Air with 4 gig of RAM, and also my Dell XPS 15, which I think is a 2019 model with an nvidia, was it 1650 card. So what I'm going to do is actually go through the configuration for these and have a bit of tea and show you some of the things I came across, because the way Nix works is you can't install binary packages, pre-built binary packages, because the file system is completely different. So if I switch across to the file system and list the file system, you see it looks pretty normal here. But if I go into, for example, was it user bin, you can see there's one file in there in user bin. So this is another thing you've got to keep in mind, is there is the whole root file system is configured with text files. So there is, for example, no user local bin to put your scripts in. So that's one thing you've got to keep in mind. You can install things like Flatpak and app images, but there's no apt, so you don't install anything with apt. It's all done with these text files. So what I'm going to do is actually come across and show you the configuration here. So what we've got is 2 text files, configuration.nix and hardware configuration. So first of all, actually installing Nix. If you come across to the documentation, install Nix. This is installing the package manager. I want NixOS. I've actually got I've actually got a link here, so let me just grab the link. Or I thought I did. Okay, so where was the thing? But basically in here there is a can't remember where the flipping thing is. You basically download the ISO, burn it to a USB stick, you know, copy it to a USB stick, plug it in, press F12 on the computer, boot up into the installer. And once you've done that and you go through the installer, what will happen is it will eventually create these two files, configuration.nix and hardware configuration. Let me just switch across to Emacs as it would be easier to actually look at these. So configuration.nix, let's make this a bit bigger. So I said what happens is you go through the installer and it creates these two text files and uses those to actually install the system. Now the first thing, this is a file that I've actually customized and configured. But the first thing is the actual hardware, etc. Hardware configuration. So what you'll see in here is this section here, like file system, root. And what you'll see here is dev disk by label root. By default, what will happen is it will use the UID of the disk. And what you want to actually do is get it to use labels instead, because that allows you to move this configuration to another system. What I'm going to do is actually quickly show you how you can add labels to different partitions so that you can change the configuration from using UIDs to disk by label. So it's very easy. What we do is we come across here and we're going to open disks. And basically what you do, as you can see here, I've already done this. Let me just see if I can make that bigger. So what you see here is we've got the EFI partition, the root, and the swap. And the way that you actually add a label here is you select these. You don't select the Lux thing, so you select either root, swap, or EFI. And you come down to this little gear icon here, and you click Edit File Systems. And what this allows you to do is actually add a label. So you can actually add labels in here, so EFI, root, and swap. Then what you do is you come back into this hardware configuration Nix, which is in etc. NixOS hardware configuration, and you can then change the these sections here for root, EFI, and swap to use by label. I haven't managed to change the Lux devices here, but that's how you change you add disk labels using the disk application so that you can change the UID. So that's the first thing that's a bit of a gotcha. Now the second thing is the console. You have a console key map. So if I just come across here, console key map equals. Now what I found was I'm using a MacBook type layout where I sort of, you know, it's, even though it's a Dell XPS, I still have a MacBook layout. So that the like shift 2 is at, or whereas sometimes it's reversed. Sometimes you'll have shift 2 will be double quotes. So the problem you may have is you'll go through and set NixOS up and put in a root password for the Lux encryption, and you've set your key map up and everything. But then when you reboot in, what I found was, because the console key map was set by default to sort of UK, it wasn't the at key and the double quotes were in the wrong way round. So I had to, put in my password with the things swapped. And then once I actually booted in, what I did was I changed the configuration.nix to use console keymap equals US, and that got the keys working. So those are two things that I wanted to cover. Changing the hardware configuration from using UIDs to using labels, and also the issue with the console keymap that may bite you in the arse, and you can't figure out why you can't log in, and it's because the console keymap isn't set the same as your actual layout. So what I'm going to do is actually go through this configuration file. I'm going to go through the configuration for this and then for Home Manager. And what I'm going to do is actually show you how you can not only set up the system, but also configure applications like Firefox and GNOME. So typically with things like GNOME, you have to use GNOME tweaks or dconf, and you go through and you manually change all these settings, or you can use gsettings on the command line. What you can do with Nix is actually apply all those settings to dconf to completely customize GNOME to how you like it. So you can set dark theme, change all the fonts, all from a configuration file. So let's crack on and have a look at this. So first of all, we've got this import section here, which is importing the hardware configuration. So what Nix does is when you run it, it will detect the hardware that you're using and actually create this hardware configuration file with specifics for your system, and also the file system layout, and what file system it is, ext for. Well, I want to. That's another thing I want to mention is when you're actually using the GUI installer. If you want to manually partition stuff, you have options to use all the different file systems you want. But if you're just using the automatic guided install, it just defaults to ext4. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. So what we've got down here is this section down here, and what you see is the way this is written is we have settings that would be like nix.settings auto optimize store. So what we can actually do is when we have settings that have the same kind of, not same kind of name, we can break them up like this. So instead of writing nix.gsetting, nix.settings.auto-optimize store, nix.gc, we can actually group them all like this. So this section will actually optimize the Nix store by doing sort of garbage collection, because what you have is when you boot in the boot menu, you have different versions that you can boot back into the system configuration. So that's the first thing. Then what we've got down here is the bootloader. So this is setting up the EFI. What I'm doing here is I clean the temp directory every time we reboot. This is the bit of code that actually sets up the Lux encryption here. So this is all the bootloader settings for EFI and the Lux. So now what we've got down here is the networking. So we set the host name, we set network manager enabled, and what that does is that enables Wi-Fi and Ethernet and all that kind of goodness. Then we've got the firewall down here, where we can enable the firewall and specify the allowed TCP and UDP ports. So instead of installing something like GUFW or doing IP tables, you set your firewall up in the configuration file. So it's one less thing to do. Next, what we've got here is all this stuff of the time zone. Now this is the services, and this is where we can actually enable things like the keyboard layout, and this one here, the video drivers, NVIDIA. This is amazing. what you do on NVIDIA systems is you just enable video drivers equals NVIDIA and allow unfree true in this config. And it installs, let me come back here. You can see here we've got the NVIDIA settings, and it enables nvenc encoding in OBS Studio. So basically all I had to do was stick this in the configuration, run go as nix dash rebuild switch or sudo, and it rebuilds the system. I booted in, NVIDIA's all set up. Whereas on Ubuntu, what happens is you kind of got to go into this separate bit like software and sources, and then you have to pick a driver, and there's no way, it doesn't automatically update. You kind of got to do it every time. And for ages, I didn't even realize it was there, and I couldn't figure out why my computer was so slow till I realized I hadn't installed the graphics driver. So this is a much better way of getting NVIDIA set up than Ubuntu. Much less faffing about, 2 lines of code in the configuration file versus faffing about with some GUI. And there was an issue that I had a while ago where the GUI wouldn't even work, so you couldn't update the graphics driver and you had to do it on the command line, and it was a pain in the arse. And now this next section here, this is where I'm actually excluding a package, xterm, which is installed by default. Then what we have here is enabling the GNOME desktop. And the other really cool thing about it, Nix, is the way it works is everything is compartmentalized into its own little folder with all the dependencies. So you can actually install a completely different desktop and it won't affect anything else on your system. So you can switch from GNOME to KED to Mate to XFCE without mucking up your system. If you've ever installed Ubuntu and then tried to remove GNOME and install KDE, you know it's going to cause problems. With Nix, everything is separate. So just by changing a couple of lines in your configuration, you can switch to a completely different desktop without affecting anything else on your system. So this next section here is where we're disabling CUPS printing, we're enabling AVI, which is for network discovery, thermals. Now this next one here, open shush enable. This had me baffled for a while because what I was doing was setting up shush keys. I couldn't figure out why shush add wasn't working. And what I found was you need this open shush enabled equals true, as well as this shush start agent, which is in this configuration a bit further down. And what happened was I initially thought the open SSH was for enabling an open SSH server on the system, but it's not. It's actually used for shush add as well. So you need this open shush enabled equals true, which we're going to be using with shush add to get our shush keys working, and also set up with GNOME keyring so that when you log in, you can use shush automatically without using shush add every time you log in. It will remember your SSH keys. You can use them straight away when you log in, which is great. So this next section down here is for hardware. So this is for OpenGL. So what we have is hardware OpenGL enable extra packages with PKGs, VAPI. You know, these are things for sort of playback and things like MPV. We've got the key map down here for the console, as I was mentioning earlier, and this is where the sound is enabled. And you can see here we've got Pipewire enabled. Then what we've got down here is the user. So this is my user, the groups, network manager, wheel, audio and video. I'm not sure if you need the audio and video, but I stuck them in there anyway. What you'll find by default is in this configuration file, it will list, it will come with Firefox uncommented here. So Firefox will be installed. But you don't want to install packages in the configuration file And the reason for that is because if you do that, every time you install a package and you sort of do an update, it's going to update the whole system. So what we're going to be doing is using Home Manager, which is another application which allows you to install applications and actually configure the system as well, things like the desktop and Firefox. So you don't install stuff using the configuration.nix file, because as I said, every time you would install a package, you'd be rebuilding the system. So I'll show you Home Manager in a second. Then what we've got down here is Nix pkgs config allow unfree. So this allows unfree software, for example, the proprietary nvidia graphics drivers. So this next section here, this is interesting. This is how you can actually exclude packages from being installed in GNOME. So what we have here is this section here with pkgs, and then this, and then with pkgs.gnome. So what this means is these packages are normally called pkgs.gnome photos, pkgs.gnome tour, whereas these ones are called pkgs.gnome.cheese, pkgs.gnome.gnome calendar. So what we're basically doing is saying exclude these packages. So exclude GNOME photos, tour, text editor, cheese, GNOME calendar, contacts, clocks, music, maps, epiphany, geary, events, characters, weather, simple scam, and totem. So that removes everything we don't want. The other nice thing about this is, as opposed to Ubuntu, is we're getting the proper GNOME desktop. So if I come down here for a second, what you see is, you can see that we've got the latest GNOME. So I was on GNOME Ubuntu 22.04. This is the latest GNOME with all the nice new menus and all that kind of stuff. So that's the other thing, is we've got the latest version of GNOME from upstream without all the Ubuntu branding. So it's a bit like on Android. You have Pixel and you have Android and the pure version of Android. Then you might have something on Samsung, and Samsung puts its own branding on there and its own apps and stuff. It's the same with Ubuntu and GNOME. They put in a dock, and all this other stuff. As you can see here, there's no dock installed with this. So that's the other nice thing about this, is we can completely customize. We get the latest version of GNOME, and we can actually customize it and remove all the applications we don't want, which is great. So next thing is actually ZSH. So what we're doing here is actually saying program ZSH enable. And what we're doing is we're actually enabling some different options. So we're enabling completion and syntax highlighting. Now in this next section down here, what you see is, so this is program ZSH. And then we've got two other programs being configured. Dconf enable equals true. And what that allows us to do is actually configure dconf settings from a configuration file. So rather than opening up, you install your new system, then you've got to go into GNOME tweaks, you've got to go into dconf, you've got to set all these different things. We can set all those things programmatically in a configuration file. The next thing here is SSH start agent equals true. And again, to get this working, you also need the OpenSSH enabled equals true, because the shush agent actually uses the OpenSSH package. And we have these two other things down here that are set for ZSH as well. We've got power management enabled here. Then what we've got next down here is DOAS. DOAS is a alternative to sudo, and what we can actually do is enable DOAS and actually write out the configuration file. So the configuration file for DOAS would normally be etc.doas.conf. And what we can do with this section security.doas equals enable true extra config. You can see we've got extra config equals 2 single quotes, and then the actual config that would go in the etc doas file. So this will be appended to the doas file, and it has 2 rules in there already, which I'll show you. But what this allows me to do is unmount drives without a password. So you can see here we've got permit no pass, my username, command mount and unmount. We've got this allow root to switch to our user, which is something I use for one of my scripts. I'll go past these ones here, but this is the one I wanted to show you, NixOS rebuild switch. So what you can do is you can actually, when you rebuild NixOS, you run like sudo nix rebuild switch, and you have to put in your password. Let me just finish this tea. What we can do is we can use doas and set it up so that we can run doas nix-rebuild switch without having to enter our password. The way we do that is by permit no pass, keep environment, set environment path, username, command nixos -rebuild. And basically what this does is it needs to actually find a particular path to run this command. So this is the way we do that here. And we've got this little section down here, root as root. So again, the NixOS rebuild switch, permit no path, keep environment, set environment path, username, command nixos rebuild. And that's the end of the configuration file for this system. What I'm going to do is actually come across into my doc files here. So this is the configuration for my doc files and my system. So what we've got here is Home Manager. So what I've got is actually a couple of files. I've got Home Manager config file, Firefox Nix, and dconf Nix. So what I'm going to do is come across here and show you the configuration for Home Manager. So let me just switch back here. Actually, after you've installed NixOS, all you need to do to actually get Home Manager installed is to run 3 lines of code. This will follow the unstable path, which is the bleeding edge, which I'm using because I want the latest version of Emacs. So Nix channel, add this, Nix channel, update, and then Nix shell Home Manager -a install. That will install Home Manager. Now, I had a nasty issue with Home Manager. Got everything set up on my MacBook Air, feeling confident, so I decided to crack on and get it set up on the Dell XPS. Got Nix installed, go to install Home Manager, and it won't install. Oh, fuck. You know what I mean? Because the whole point of NixOS is that the tagline is, you know, if it will build on one system, it will build on another. And I thought, oh yeah, because you know, Sod's Law, that caught my eye during the install, and I've obviously jinxed it. There was a section in here, yeah. Okay, so what happened for me was I was getting an error with Home Manager not building, and the issue was the man pages weren't building. There was a dependency error or something. So what I had to do was put in manual.manpages.enabled equals false. That stopped the man pages for Home Manager being built on this system. I mean, I can always look at them online. It's a bit annoying, but yeah, at least it builds. So that was the first thing. So what we've got here, first of all, is this section down here is actually for building Emacs. So this first section down here is for building Emacs, pure GTK as a Wayland application. So this is Emacs running as a native Wayland application. And what we've got here is, first of all, we've fetched this tarball, and we've got Emacs enable equals true. And what you'll see here is this section, extra packages equals epkgs, vterm. So what vterm is it's a terminal emulator that runs inside Emacs. The problem is that it uses a pre-built binary to do this, and pre-built binaries can't run on NixOS because it has a different file system layout than any other Linux distribution. So if you install, normally you can install vterm from within Emacs, but that's not going to work. So what we do is we use this here when we build Emacs to actually install the NixOS version of vterm. So this is vterm, so you can see it's working. So that's how we get vterm installed. And this brings me on to something else is that you may not have thought about is, how do I watch DRM videos on NixOS? Because DRM videos in browsers require Widevine, which is a pre-built binary. In things like Firefox, you can go enable enable DRM, and it downloads the Widevine binary. So that's another thing I wanted to mention that we get around. What we've also got here is GPG enabled equals true. Then we've got this import section here, which I'm going to cover the imports for Firefox and dconf, because that will basically allow you to completely configure Firefox. Once you've set up Firefox like this, you really won't want to go back to doing it manually, because every time you start up a new system, you've got to go into Firefox. You've got to you've got to install all your extensions. You've got to go through each of these sections. Change the the fonts, all this kind of stuff. This can all be changed. So I'm going to get to that, because once you've installed Firefox this way, anything else will just seem like something out of the Stone Age. So that's the imports. We can actually create configuration files and import them so we don't have one massive file. Then what we've got down here is services. So this is how we start services. So like Emacs is starting as a systemd service. And then we've got the GNOME keyring here. So the GNOME keyring's being started. We've got the GPG agent being started with extra config. So you can also configure the dot files for these applications in this as well, which makes it a hell of a lot easier when you're going through setting stuff up. So these are the services we're installing. We need this for the systemd shush authentication socket. What we need to set this for things like Emacs to be able to use this shush key. So what we've got next down here is GTK, and what we can actually do, configure GTK settings. So for example, let's say .config GTK pre. What you see here, you can see this settings.ini. There's actually a symbolic link here. And basically, if I have a look at that, .config GTK3 settings, what you'll see here, it says GTK application preferred dark theme true. And that is basically what's here. So what we're doing in this block of code is we're actually creating that settings.ini file for GTK to prefer dark themes. So rather than having to go into the system settings, go into appearance, and then select dark theme, stop that, stick it in your config, do it automatically. Next thing I wanted to cover is MPV and mpris. Mpris is I don't know what you call it, but it allows you to query the video or audio in a current player. So you can use global keyboard shortcuts to play and pause the video or audio, and it's really handy. And the way we do this is MPV has a sort of scripts that you can install, and you can sort of download and install these scripts and put them into configure, put them in the right directory, and MPV will pick them up. But what we can do with NixOS is actually configure MPV to be packaged with those scripts when we install it. So what we have here is this Nix overlay MPV super override self MPV scripts mpris. Okay, I can't read it, my brain doesn't quite fathom it, but you can kind of see what it does, it's saying override MPV and sort of install this as well. Now what we've got down here is home packages with packages. These are all the packages that are going to be installed on the system. So this is the really cool thing, is we've got a configuration for the system in the hardware and configuration.nix. Then we've got our home manager config, and they're totally separate, and updating one won't affect the other. So we can update the whole system and it's not going to affect the applications. We can update the applications, it's not going to affect the system. All these applications are stored in their own individual directory with all the dependencies required for them. So none of these updating one application is not going to mess up another application, basically. So this is a list of all the applications we can install, and if I come across to Nix, come to the search, okay, there we go. So packages. So we can search for unstable. So you've got different channels here. I'm using the unstable channel. So this is how we can search for applications. So I can say like OBS Studio, for example. And of course, it's going to be a bit slow while I'm doing this. So you can see here, these are all the things. So if I go come down here, you'll see the actual thing here. So you can see these are typically called like pkgs.obs studio. So what you can see here in this section here, it says home packages equals with pkgs. And what that means is we don't have to write pkgs.abook, pkgs.apg, etc., etc. That get very boring. We can just actually write the name of the application to install without the pkg prefix. So that means, don't repeat yourself, don't type the same things all over again. So this is basically a list of the applications we've got here installed on the system. abook, apg for creating passwords, aria2 for downloading stuff, bat, cat clone with syntax highlighting, bc, curl, csv kit, dconf, gnome tweak, xif tool, fd, fzf, ffmpeg, Code, font, git, ImageMagick, JQ links, libnotify. So that's another thing I wanted to mention, is I've actually got the Emacs desktop notification server working. So I don't get the, desktop notifications through GNOME, I get them through Emacs. So I want to show you how startup scripts work as well. So you can actually automatically set something to be automatically started. We've got other stuff down here, all command line tools, MPD, MPV, MUT, Newsboat, okay, OBS Studio, transmission. I haven't configured transmission as yet. Some of these applications will have different package names on Ubuntu. For example, Task Spooler on Ubuntu is called TSP. On Nix, it's just TS. So these are all the applications we got down here. And this is one I wanted to mention, Widevine-CDM. So if I come across to Firefox settings, Okay, this section down here, digital rights management, DRM content, play DRM controlled content. Normally what happens is when you set Firefox up, what you do is you tick that box and it would download the Widevine binary so you can watch DRM stuff like ITV Channel 4, Amazon, whatever it is. You don't want to do that on Nix because I said it's not going to work. So what you do is you install the Widevine-CDM package. You install that, and then once you've installed it, you run Home Manager switch, you reboot, that sort of thing. You can come into Firefox, use play DRM controlled content, and this is still logged in. And also I want to show you an easy way to see if something is playing as a let's see if we can just find something that I can use as a demo just quickly. Oh yeah, but you're already on the buses. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this, pause it because of copyright, all that doodah, but I just want to show you that it actually works. So what you'll notice up here in the URL bar is this, manage use of DRM software. So this is how you can tell at a glance if a video you're watching in the browser is using DRM encryption or not, so that you know if you can, you know, do stuff with it. Let's say that. So if I press this, you can see it's playing. So you can see this is DRM enabled and it's working. So that's what I wanted to show you, is you put Widevine CDM in your Home Manager config. You run Home Manager Home Manager switch. Once you've done that, you can come into Firefox and enable DRM. So that is the Home Manager setup. So what I'm actually going to do is come across to these other things. We've got config.nix, and this is the NUR, and this is awesome. What this allows you to do is specify a list of Firefox extensions to install when you build Firefox. Yeah, so you don't have to go into Firefox and go, you know, add-ons, install Vimium, install Firefox multi-containers, install uBlock Origin, you know, all that kind of palaver. Because you don't think about it. You think, okay, I've just got my doc files, you know, set up a new system, put my doc files in, I'm ready to go. No, you got to configure your browser. You got to configure the desktop. You got to go through all, you know, half a dozen different windows to set stuff up. But this is the first thing we do, is we create this config.nix file with this bit of code in it. And what this does is it uses something called the NUR, which is a community repository that people package stuff up to. So they package up Firefox extensions so that you can actually download and install them. And what I'll do is I'll see if I can come across to find the link. I've probably got it written down somewhere. NUR. Yeah, I'm on Google. If it's this one or this one. Okay, the NUR repository is a community-driven meta repository for Nix packages. So this gives you stuff on how to actually sort of set it up. And this is the Nix user repositories. So NUR is Nix user repositories. So you can come across here and you can search for you know, Firefox extensions. What you need to do is actually get the right name for the packages. So what I'm going to do is come across now to this, which is the Firefox config, and this is bonkers. This will make your head explode, because what you can do is turn on and turn off all the Firefox features when you build Firefox. So what you'll see here is programs Firefox enabled true. What we got this saying package wrap Firefox. So PKG's Firefox Unwrapped. So what it's doing is it's kind of creating a wrapper around Firefox with all the options that we want. So what we can do is we can enable these extra policies. So we can disable Firefox studies, disable Pocket, telemetry, Firefox accounts, no bookmarks, offer to save passwords, no, etc., etc. And what we got down here is extensions with PKGs, NUR, repos, RC, Firefox extension, Firefox add-ons rather. What you see here is we've got a list of some extensions I want to install. I couldn't find Don't Track Me Google, so I had to install that manually, and maybe I just missed it. But what this will do is this will sort of side load all these extensions into Firefox. And the first time you start up Firefox, what you actually got to do is you actually got to manually enable the extensions, and that's a security feature built into Firefox, so that you can't do anything dodgy, you know, side loading things without the user's permission. But this will actually install all the extensions. So rather than coming across into Firefox, you know, what you'd normally have to do is you come across into add-ons and themes. You know, you'd search for each add-on, you'd go through and enable them. Nah, all you do is you set this up. First time you run Firefox, you get a little message coming up here saying the extensions need to be enabled. You come in here, boom, 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 enable them, you're good to go. So that's the extensions installed. And what we can do here is profiles. So Firefox can be configured. Let me show you. What you can do with Firefox is you can go to About, Config, and you can search for different options. You know, if I just like search for tab, and you can come through and you can see these have all got different names like browser.bookmarks.open in tab close menu equals true. You can go through and you can sort of change all these manually like this. What you can also do, if I can bring up the menu, is if I come across to help, is it troubleshooting mode? Yeah. So Firefox has a profiles directory, and there's a way to open it from here. Sure there is. Firefox features, add-ons. There's a way you can find the profile directory somewhere or other. I forget where it is. Now that I mention it, let me see if I can. Maybe I didn't choose the right thing. Is it about Firefox? No. Yeah, but basically there's a way in here you can actually open the profiles directory. So if I come across here, LSA Mozilla, see, okay, Firefox, you know, that's the default profile. So the default profile is M1, okay. So this is the default profile directory, and as you can see, it's going to have a different file path for every profile because it's a random string of numbers. Now, in this file, in this directory, what you can actually do, if I come back here, what you can do is you can create a user.js file like this and put in these options like user preference, use legacy style sheets. What you can also do is create a Chrome directory and have a user chrome.css file and then user content.css file to both configure to style Firefox and to style external websites. Problem is, you've got to copy that file into this directory. You've got to set those things up. So as I said, you can come into Firefox, you can go to About Config, put in all the options, or you can put the options into this user.js file and then come into Firefox, you know, find the profile directory and then copy the file across. And the reason why this is a pain is because it's been very difficult. You can't do it automatically because these profile names are different, and it's very difficult to keep this synced up across multiple machines. And that's the problem. The solution with NixOS and Home Manager is that you can actually use this options here. Profiles default equals true, extra config. This extra config thing is creating that user.js file that will go in your profiles directory with all the settings that you would put in about config. So what this means is you can put all these settings in this block of code and have Firefox automatically configured. So for example, about config warning, every time you start up Firefox, a fresh install, it's going to say, you know, do you want to accept the risk? You know, you might do something dodgy, that sort of thing. You've got to untick it. You can set that show warning false. You can enable the strict blocking mode. You can do things like don't open the panel in the toolbar. You know, when you get downloads, it opens this little panel. You can set that. You can change that. You can move the download button. The tab manager, that new view tab thing, you can disable that. You can disable the safe browsing feature, which uses which pings Google every time you check a URL. So you can disable that as well. You can configure the browsers. You can now this is also handy. You can set the home page to be blank, so, and all the tabs to be blank. So by default, when you open up Firefox and you open up a new tab like this, it's going to have like a big search bar, some pocket stories, littering your thing, and you know, on the new tab page. So what we can do here is we can set the home page to be blank, the startup page to be blank, to have no pocket stories or anything. We can disable the Firefox view thing. This activity stream, this is how we disable all the sponsored stories, all the sponsored pocket stories, all the, you know, top sites shortcuts. You know, it comes up with like Amazon and Bing and eBay as shortcuts. We can remove all of those. We can also set the URL placeholder, see if it's taken here. Okay, it's not working now. So what you can, you see here it says search with Google or enter address. You can replace this word Google, but what happens is it seems to work and then not work. So see if I can get this to, yeah. So what I had is you've got this section here, browser URL bar placeholder name. And by default, that's Google, but you can change it to something else. So I said your mind. So if I was to quit all this and restart it, let's just quit all this and restart it. Okay, so you can see here, search with your mind or enter address. But for some reason, if I open it again, if I open a new one, after a while it seems to actually disappear. So let me open another one. See, now it's gone back to search with Google or enter address. So I'm actually going to remove that one because it doesn't actually stick, but I wanted to show you it's actually possible. URL bookmarks we can hide, URL history false, search suggestions, bookmarks, search history, we can set all these things. Top sites we can disable the health report for Firefox. Now this is a really useful one too, actually. Don't let sites disable right-click contextual menus, and don't let sites disable copy and paste. And this is something that really annoys me. There's a particular site I use, Newcastle United football site, and what they do is they disable copy and paste in the login. So you can't paste in your login details, which is ridiculous. So what these two settings will do is actually stop sites disabling your right click. You know, sometimes you right click on a page and it's been disabled so you can't view source or that sort of thing. Not having that, we can get around it. So these two will disable stop sites disabling right click and stop sites disabling copy and paste. We can also set the HTTPS mode, active experiments false, pocket on home screen false. So we can disable all the pocket crap. Geo enabled false. We can set all the media playback stuff in here. Show puny code in the URL bar. And puny code is sometimes they'll use different characters to make it look like it's another website when it isn't. We can set all the network policies down here. Shortcuts, don't track us. We can enable the CSS style sheets down here. We can also set the GTK theme, and what we've got down here is the user Chrome. So what we can also do is actually create the user Chrome file that will be used to style Firefox and put all the options in there that we want. So what we've got here is we can hide the minimize buttons, and what I like to do here is if I just come down to this section here, this is the right click menu. So if I come into Firefox, see, if I just right click, I've just got inspect. Let me just come across to a site. If I right click here, we just got like inspect, Firefox multi-containers and block element. Typically you get loads of stuff like bookmark this page, search with pocket, doodah, like a list of loads of stuff. Basically what we can do is we can disable all these, so that this is like this, email link, bookmark link, save, copy image, take screenshot, open link in private tab, search for private, accessibility, save page, select all, view source, back, forward. We can disable all these things down here. So this will disable a lot of those options in the right click. So what we've got in this Firefox Nix file is a way to disable all these policies. So if I come into Firefox and come into settings, you see there's no Firefox sync. Yeah, it's not there. There's no Firefox account because I've disabled it. So rather than coming into Firefox and going through and changing like 30-40 options and then opening the opening the profiles folder and copying a user.js file and copying some files, CSS files across, do it all in this one file. You can also do this on any Linux distribution or Mac OS X without using NixOS. You can just use Home Manager and build Firefox and set it all up using this configuration file, just using Home Manager. So this is something that will work on NixOS and on any other Linux distribution or Mac OS X. Yeah, so Arch Linux, Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, whatever, it will Home Manager will run on any of them and allow you to have a list of applications that you build with pre-configured of all the options you want or don't want installed. So as I said, we've got all these extra policies. We've got all the add-ons we want to install. We're setting all the options that would normally go into about config or into the user.js file. Yeah, got all that. And we've also got the user Chrome. We could also have the user content to style websites as well. So this is, without a doubt, the best way to install Firefox I've ever seen. Because basically, I set it all up on one machine, come across to the Dell, set it up, everything's set up. So it was so there weren't that many things I had to actually do to actually get this set up. So there were some things I had to do, like, change the placement of the icons and stuff, but all this stuff is automatically configured. The home page and new page automatically set to be blank. All this stuff unchecked. The search, privacy and security, it's automatically set to strict. Content blocking, do not track. There were some things I need to go through and actually figure out what the options are for things like delete cookies. So I had to. There was a couple I had to set manually, but the majority of this is actually all pre-configured. So you can see all this Firefox data collection and use all disabled. HTTPS mode enabled. So that's all enabled, and all the extensions installed. So literally all I had to do was come into customize toolbar, put a few things there, tick a few options, done. So what I'm going to do now is move on to dconf. So what we got here is dconf, and what this is we are setting all the options for GNOME in a configuration file. So if I come across dconf, so this is the dconf editor, and this allows you to set options for the system, sort of, whether it's GNOME. The same thing will apply to things like KDE and XFCE. They all have options that you can sort of set, but I'm just going to show you GNOME. So typically what you'll have is, if I come off to the sort of settings, so you have your settings like appearance, all these different sort of things that you can set in here, and these will actually be set in dconf as well. So the things you set in settings are will show up in dconf and vice versa. So you can come into here and change all these different options sort of manually. Let me see if I can desktop. Okay, GNOME desktop, WM, key bindings. So you can come through and you can manually come through and change all these options. You can also use gsettings on the command line to write out these options. So you've got, like, it'd be like gsettings GNOME or GNOME desktop WM key bindings, activate window menu, and then you could put a key binding in. So you could manually go through and do the gsettings on the command line, or you could have a script that sort of would apply a shitload of gsettings. So what we can do with Home Manager, and we have to have dconf enabled in our NixOS configuration file. So I'm not sure if this will work on things that aren't NixOS, but on NixOS what we can do is we can have all these dconf settings and actually apply them. So here we can set the color scheme to dark, the input sources, we can set the interface, how the clock is. We can disable animations. We can set the options for the touchpad. So natural scroll false. So you get it set up and got that flipping natural scroll and it's doing it the wrong way. And you've got to go through into your settings, mouse and keyboard, natural scroll, turn that off. And then, you'd be going in and out all these different windows. You can change all the settings in this. And what I've got here is my key bindings. So I can actually set all the key bindings that I want, so that I can easily switch windows without having to manually go through and apply them. So we got close, move to monitor left, move to monitor right, to workspace 1, 2, 3, 4, switch applications. So I can do shift super J and K, switch applications like this. switch to workspace. Then we've got things for Mutter, center new window. So when typically on GNOME, when you open a new window, it's going to come up in the top left and set it to open centered. Dynamic workspaces, the overlay key, workspace on primary, the play button. So this is using mpris. Play is actually using mpris to control a video player. So we can set the keyboard shortcut for that. We can set the power settings. So, you know, sometimes by default, it's going to dim your screen after 5 minutes or something, or, you know, put it on lock after half an hour. You can disable all that if you don't want it. And then you can disable key binding as well here. Switch to application 1, 2, 3, 4. We can set the color scheme as well here. So prefer dark. So rather than going into settings and going into appearance and going color dark, do it in the configuration. WM preferences. So those are all the settings that I'm actually setting. So I've got all my touchpad configured. I've got all the keyboard shortcuts I want, all the options that I don't want or do want set up. And basically, once I run Home Manager switch, bang, everything just gets set up automatically. So those are the 4 files that I've got in my Home Manager config. So what I'm just going to do is go through some of the options here. So I've got Emacs set up. I don't think there was anything on that. On ZSH, ZSHRC, typically in your ZSHRC file, you can configure packages like enable highlighting or whatever, and sometimes you put like enable highlighting and a path to some file or other. That doesn't work on Nix. It doesn't. We don't do stuff like that. It's all done in the configuration file. So if you remember in the configuration.nix for the system, we had ZSH enabled, and we said enable auto-completion and syntax highlighting. So those are some things that we don't actually set in our config. That was just one thing I wanted to mention. Another thing that I was actually a bit worried about was MPV, because on Ubuntu, MPV wouldn't work at all with the latest NVIDIA graphics drivers, and I had to do some mad workaround to not source NVIDIA scripts or something to actually get NVIDIA to work. So I was a bit skeptical if I could get nvenc and MPV working, but it worked out the box flawlessly. So let me see. Have I got? I don't know if I actually copied any videos across as yet. No, that's the one I'm actually recording at the moment. I haven't actually got any videos on here. But if I were to come across to YouTube, I'll just grab something and just play your link so that I can show you that MPV is working flawlessly. So let's get Sneezing Panda. Okay, Sneezing Panda, copy link, MPV. Give it a second or two. Okay, so I'm going to pause that there, and you can see ULSA and GPU. So you can see we're using GPU and VAPI, and you can see that the video's opened flawlessly. So I'll just quit that. But I just wanted to show you that MPV working perfectly with hardware acceleration, and we have the NVIDIA server settings here. So we've got the NVIDIA doodad there, all working perfectly. And so it's so much easier to get it set up on NixOS than it is actually on Ubuntu. So what I'll just do is come out here and just come across here. So as you can see, there's no dash to dock thing installed by default. We've just got a minimum set of applications installed. You can see here, console settings, dconf, tweaks, password, system monitor, disks. And remember, I showed you with the disks how you can set the labels, because remember, when you install NixOS, it's going to create the hardware configuration file, which has got the UID in it, and you can change the labels with the disks. We just got stuff, image viewer, logs, NixOS manual, calculator, extensions, help, video settings, MPV, transmission, and Zathura. I need to do some work on setting up transmission. I haven't got that working as yet. But you can see this is a completely stripped down version of GNOME. No cruft, no bloat, no Ubuntu branding, anything like that. Really nice and clean. And we also have the latest menu and everything here with nice little toggle stuff. So we've got the latest version of GNOME, all stripped down, all totally pre-configured. So everything in the settings, right, in the settings again, all this stuff, a lot of this stuff, like keyboard and mouse, with mouse and touchpad. So, natural scrolling, all that turned off. All those things pre-configured, with all my keyboard shortcuts set up from a text file. So we've got Firefox completely set up with all the extensions installed, all the options disabled, enabled we want. We've got GNOME completely set up using dconf. So simply from, let's see, so we've got our NixOS configuration here, and that's just basically two files, the configuration.nix and the hardware. So again, the hardware going to enable these different things, and this is where we changed the dev disk by to dev disk by label, and we added the labels using disks. So that's the hardware config, and again, this is the configuration file where we import the hardware config. And let's just make that a bit bigger so you can see it. We got the Nixdor auto optimize for garbage collection. We've got our bootloader, the intent directory. We've got the Lux devices, the networking set up with the firewall, time zone. We've got the services we want. We've got our keyboard layout set up. Again, this is amazing. The nvidia, just video drivers equals nvidia, and allow unfree packages, reboot. nvidia is all set up. nvenc encoding in OBS automatically detected. OBS automatically just I ran the wizard before, and then it selected no software encoded. Set nvidia up, switch back to OBS Studio. Boom, automatically configured itself for nvenc encoding. Brilliant. We exclude PK xterm. We enable GNOME. Disable these things. Remember, OpenSSH. That's needed for the shush keys. We got the hardware, OpenGL for video playback. The console key map. Remember, I mentioned if you're having any issues, you set a password, you reboot into NixOS, and the password's not working. Maybe because of the console key map is different than your keyboard layout, where, for example, that the @ can be swapped with the double quotes on two sometimes. Then we have the sound enabled. We've got our user enabled here. And again, we don't use this section here, packages with PKGs to install stuff. We use Home Manager. Again, we need the Nix PKG allow on free for the NVIDIA driver. And this was the section how we set up GNOME. So we've got two bits where we're setting up GNOME. One in the configuration.nix where we're setting up GNOME and we're removing these packages. So we're removing GNOME Photos, Tor, text editor, calendar, cheese, the clocks, all the stuff we don't want. We're removing all that. And then we're also using the dconf to set all the settings for GNOME. And again, this was ZSH, as I was mentioning a minute or two ago. We enable the completion highlighting and the syntax, the completion and syntax highlighting here. This was the dconf enabled, so this allows that dconf home manager configuration file to take effect and to modify the GNOME desktop environment, so everything's all automatically set up for us. We've got our shush agent starting. So what happens is when you do like when I was in Emacs and I'm running magit, which is to do a git, you know if you use Emacs, you know what magit is. It prompts me for my SSH key and it comes up with a GUI prompt, and also has a little checkbox to enable saving the key in the GNOME keyring. So now I have my shush key stored in my GNOME keyring, and it's automatically unlocked at when I log in. So I don't have to do shush add, pasting my key and pasting my shush key every time, because I'm using full disk encryption. Then you've got to log in. So is there really any need to do shush add manually? You might as well store it in your keychain. And again, this is more configuration for ZSH here. And this was the DOAS, as I mentioned, so that we can actually write out the DOAS config. So let's have a look at the DOAS config. So etc. DOAS is going to give me a permission denied. Yeah, okay, it's permission denied. So DOAS, bat, etc. DOAS. Okay, so by default, Nix comes with these two rules automatically in DOAS down here. And what we're doing is we're appending our rules after those. So rules after these will take precedence. So we can just leave those in there and overwrite them. But I wanted to show you that this section down here, this extra config, that's what's being written to etc. DOAS, you can see down there. And this is how we, again, permit no pass, keep environment, set environment path, username, command, NixOS rebuild will allow us to run DOAS, NixOS rebuild switch without entering our password. So that's the DOAS recap. And what I've got here is my MacBook Air configuration. So if I just come into here and go into configuration, there's the hardware, same setup here, disk by label, root. It's going to have different stuff enabled for the kernel, because this is a Intel, whereas the Dell's a nvidia. But you can see I've got pretty much the same setup here, or exactly the same setup as on the Dell. So we got our root files for our XPS 15 MacBook Air. We got our dot files here. So you can see these are all the dot files, ZSH, WM3, config, all that kind of stuff. And then the bin directory. So this is another thing I wanted to mention, is there is no user local bin on NixOS. So the reason why this is important is because typically you would use that for scripts that you run with elevated permissions like sudo or DOAS, because sudo and DOAS know to look in that directory to run scripts. So if you put a script in your bin directory in your home, for example, I've got a bin directory in my home, and I got a script called ossuary, which is sort of like a crypt. It's a place you store bones. So ossuary crypt, it's where it's a script I use to mount a encrypted Lux container. Now, if I try and run sudo ossuary, you see it's not auto completing because it's not on the path. So what you need to do, the scripts that you would normally put in user local bin, what I do is I put them in my bin directory in my home and I run them with the full path. So sudo ossuary is not going to work, yeah? So what you do is sudo home bin ossuary, and now it would work. The script would now work. So a bit of a pain to type the full path out. I haven't figured a way around that as yet, but that's just another thing I wanted to mention. The whole root system's off limits. You configure it all with a text file, so you can't just put in stuff in user local bin or whatever. So let's see if I can come to the root file system. So as you can see here, this is the root file system. You can see bin, going to bin sh. That's another thing I wanted to remember. I knew there was a reason I was looking at my bin directory. So shebang, there is no bin bash. Okay, there's no bin bash. So typically when you'd write a script, you'd write a shebang. Like it's a shell script, you'd run bin, you'd have bin sh, yeah. You may be used to running like bin bash. There's no bin bash. So what you have to do is if you're using bash scripts, what you have to do is use a bin environment bash on Nix. Okay, you try and run something with bin bash. As I showed you, there's no bash, but there is a sh. So it's why I write all my scripts as shell scripts and not bash scripts. You can see bin sh. If I go back to that root directory, bin sh. So any script written bin sh will work out the box on Nix. You write bin bash or any other shell path, it's not going to work. So what you have to do is either write things as shell script bin sh, or if you have bash scripts, you need to change the shebang to user bin environment bash. So that's another thing that is going to crop up. Because let's look at this file system again. Let's make it a bit bigger for you. So again, bin. I was just going to resize. Come in and out. Okay. Dev. We've got dev, etc. See, a lot of these things are symbolic links. See these things with the light blue with the arrows. Those are all symbolic links. We've got home. So Nix. That's the Nix store. That's where it keeps everything. See, these are all the actual applications. Proc. Can't go into root. Run. Okay, so that's another thing. The location for mounted drives, typically on things like Ubuntu, would be /media username something or other. On Nix is going to be run media. So if I come to where's media? It may not be showing up because there's nothing plugged in at the moment, but take my word for it, that's where things actually come up. Come on. So yeah, that's basically where drives will show up. They'll show up as run media, opposed to I'm not sure there's not even a mount, is there? We've got a mount. Yeah, as you can see, temp. There's no mount. So everything, all those kind of things are like, I think the mount might be under run media as well. But that's another thing to note about the file system and where things sort of show up. So taking about a week or so to set up a MacBook Air and the Dell XPS 15. The only thing I've got left to set up is transmission, which I think is going to be started as a service. But everything else, with a few tweaks to things like some scripts, is working fine. You can see browser all set up, all tickety boo. Everything pre-configured, all these settings automatically set up, all the extensions. That's the other thing, is you can't as yet configure the extensions. So one thing you need to do is for things like uBlock Origin, what I would recommend is if you're switching over to a new system, come into uBlock Origin, come down here, back up to file, back that up to a text file, and then when you move to a new version of Firefox, do restore from file, and it will set up uBlock. You can export from Violent Monkey, but there are some things like multi-account containers that you can't back up and restore. So there are a few things that you need to still configure yourself, like the extensions, importing the extensions. But as you can see, everything's working in the browser. All the things that I wanted disabled, like the Firefox view, is all configured. We've got DRM playback enabled. We've got hardware accelerated video with MPV. I've also tested OpenVPN, so I've got a script that connects to VPNs using private internet access. That all works. No problems there. YouTube DL, ARIA 2C. All the applications I've got set up, which admittedly isn't very many. As you can see, these are the only graphical applications I really use, and I only use OBS for doing these videos. So really, I only use Emacs and Firefox, and some command line applications, my own scripts. But everything I've tested is working fine. So Nix PKGs, home. So this is the home. So let's have a once over the home manager stuff again. This is how we configure Emacs. So this is setting up Emacs, pure GTK Wayland. We got the imports to import Firefox, dconf. This is how we're setting up the services. So services are enabled systemd services for Emacs, GNOME keyring, the GPG agent. We can specify the pin-free flavor. So I'm using the curses one instead of the pop-up one, which doesn't allow you to paste into. Systemd authentication socket, needed for things like Emacs. We've got GTK enabling dark theme in the GTK settings, and that's needed for things like Emacs, so that we get this dark toolbar. If we didn't set those, even if we had a dark theme, we'd still get a light toolbar, so we need to set those. This is the MPV mpris, as I said. This is so that we can configure MPV with mpris support, so that we can use global keyboard shortcuts to control MPV when it's not focused. This is the section where we install all the applications. So you can see here, these are all the applications that are actually getting installed. And the other two things we had was in our config .nix. This is where we set up the NUR, and that's the Nix user repository. Ring a bell, like the Arch user repository. And Nix OS and Nix PKGs, I believe, has more packages than Arch Linux. So there you go. So this configuration file, config.nix, is needed for the NUR so that we can use that with the firefox.nix to install the extensions. So again, we've got programs here, got Firefox. And again, we're creating a unwrapped version of Firefox where we disable all these things we don't want. We install the extensions. We add all in these settings that you'd normally do in about config or your user.js, which is a pain in the arse. Then we've got all that. We've got our user Chrome as well, so we can customize the right-click menu in Firefox so that it's not full of loads of stuff. And then what we've got is dconf again, and so this is, as I showed you, how we can set all the options in dconf, which is amazing because you think, oh, all I've got to do is whack in Ubuntu and then copy my doc files across and I'm good to go. No, as I said, you got to do your flipping browser. Then you got to do all those tweaks in the in the desktop manager that you're using, whether it's KDE, XFCE, GNOME, whatever. Using Nixos and Home Manager, you can set all those options so that rather than setting everything up and then spending an hour or two going through multiple window clicking things, you set it up with this. You got 1 or 2 clicks to do to set stuff up. It removes so much work, it's incredible. And it's so much easier doing it like this than you trying to use gsettings on the command line. And it's a pain to do that manually to try and keep things in sync. So doing it like this is incredible. And once you've done it like this, you won't want to go back to installing Firefox any other way. So what I'm going to do is just mention about how you would get this set up on a non-NixOS distribution. So you can use Home Manager on its own on any version of Linux or Mac OS. So what you could do is basically have something exactly the same as this, but you would you just wouldn't have this section of the with the Emacs stuff in it. Yeah, you just have the imports. Import firefox.nix. You also need that config.nix, but you could basically set this up on any version of Linux and have Firefox completely built the way you want it, with all the options. And honestly, after using this to configure Firefox, I don't think I could go back to doing it manually. So that's NixOS and Home Manager on a MacBook Air 2011 with 4 gig of RAM and a Dell XPS 15 with an nvidia, I think it's 1650 graphics card from about 2019. And yeah, got latest version of GNOME, all pre-configured, all stripped down, de-bloated, all the options configured, and so I can update the system, and it's not going to affect the packages. I can update everything in the Home Manager. It's not going to affect the system. So what it means is basically I've got git nixos. I've got 3 things to configure. I've got like my bin directory, my script. So I've got the root files here, so configuration, and then I've got my doc files, which I manage through. So this is all the doc files for Home Manager. You can manage all your doc files through Home Manager as well, so you can actually write out all the options for all these programs using Home Manager as well, but I prefer to use Emacs and org mode, because what it allows me to do, for example, is I can tangle to multiple places at once. Tangling is writing out a configuration file. So what I can do is I can write out the configuration. I can write out all these doc files to all the locations they need to be just by running a simple keyboard shortcut. And what it does is it actually writes them out into the current directory as well as my home directory. So that way I've got a multiple level backup system. I have them all here so I can, manually see them, but I also have them in this Emacs org file so that I've got like a dashboard of all my files. So rather than like opening a file, moving to another directory and opening and editing another file, just edit them all through this, and then I can just write them all out to the correct place. What I can also do is for the root files here. So these are the NixOS configuration files. So rather than sort of editing the file directly in etc. NixOS configuration, what I do is I edit them in this file and then tangle them to etc.nixOS. And the way you do that is you can see here, you can actually specify sudo like this and a file path, and it will actually write out the file to that location. So I can just edit them in here, run a keyboard shortcut, and it writes out all the configuration files for me. So this setup makes it really easy. So I've now just managed them through these two org files, my whole system. And again, the root is separate from the home, so nothing's going to interfere with each other. And we also have rollback, so we can have with Home Manager and NixOS, you can always boot back into previous versions of stuff. So I got to say, I'm impressed. I think the main selling points for this, having it all in these configuration files and actually it actually works. This setup works better than Ubuntu 22.04, where I had problems with the extension manager would never open. MPV had issues that I had to fix to get it to work. It wouldn't work at all out the box with the latest NVIDIA graphics driver. So setting up GNOME is much better. You can, as I said, you can completely debloat GNOME, just remove everything you don't want. You can configure it exactly like you want from dconf. Setting up Firefox with Home Manager is incredible. Once you've done it like this, you really won't want to manually install Firefox, install all the extension, go through all the options ever again. It will seem like something out of the Stone Age. So those are some of the selling points, but also actually getting things working like NVIDIA. The setup for the NVIDIA graphics card is far superior to on Ubuntu, where you have to go into like software and sources, additional drivers. It'll give you a list, and you've got to click thing. And you've got to keep checking that box because it doesn't automatically update. And then that GUI settings didn't work last time I used it, so you've got to do something on the command line. So yeah, doing it on Ubuntu for the drivers is crap. 2 lines of code in NixOS and it's working perfectly. So NixOS. There we go, NixOS and NixOS Home Manager is what you want. Today, please. When you get to this page, you search for Home Manager on GitHub, what you want to do is come down to this section here, installing standalone installation. So after you've actually got Nix, let me just see if I can find NixOS. Let me just go to, yeah. So let me come to the installing NixOS section. So all you need to do to actually get NixOS set up is you download the you've got the burning disk. So you download the ISO, burn it to a copy it to a with DD to a USB stick, whack it in your computer. If you're on a Mac, you press Option and then select EFI. If you're on something like a Dell, you press F12 and then select the USB. Run through the installer, and then after you've done that, just the two things to remember is the console key map issue that can bite you in the arse, where things like the @ sign and double quotes can be swapped on the keyboard. And also, after you boot into NixOS the first time, what you want to do, as I said, you use the disks application. Yeah, come into the disks, select your disk, come in here, edit file system, and set a label on the EFI, the root, and the swap. And then in your hardware.nix, change the UIDs to by label, and then root, swap, etc. and EFI. And then do a sudo NixOS rebuild switch. And what I would recommend is not changing them all at once. Change them one at a time. Otherwise, it kind of gets confused if you do it all at the same time. So maybe change root, change swap, and then change the EFI. Do a rebuild after each one, and you'll be good to go. And then you can start moving on to actually going through and setting stuff up. So there's stuff here about doing it manually, but I just did the installer, and I just went with ext4 because you can set up ZFS on NixOS, but the problem is it's that GNOME uses that system D killer or whatever it's called, and that interferes with ZFS ARC caching. So the two conflict and use a lot of RAM. So I actually set up ZFS on my system before they introduced that. So that was another good reason to get rid of ZFS. So it's probably best, if you're looking for ZFS, to just use FreeBSD, to be honest. And I didn't go for ButterFS because I didn't trust it. But this is the manual. You can go through and have a read through that. You can have a read through the Home Manager manual. But basically, after you've got NixOS installed, to install Home Manager, you just run these 3 lines. 1, 2, and then 3 to set up Home Manager. That will then create the config nixpkg's Home Manager file. And the other thing I wanted to mention, in case you get bit by this bug as well, is the man pages. Okay. Yeah, bugger. Okay, this one was the one that bit me. So I had Home Manager set up on the MacBook Air, perfectly, everything working fine. I thought, great, yeah. Okay, I'll bite the bullet, wipe the Dell XPS. Okay, wipe the Dell XPS, install NixOS. Go to install Home Manager, won't build. Oh, fuck. And it was this error with the dependencies for the manual pages not being able to build. So if you get an error with Home Manager dependencies for the man pages not building, edit your config nixpkg's home.nix file and put in manual.manpages.enabled equals false, semicolon, save the file, then run Home Manager switch, and you should be good to go. So that's everything. So that's getting Emacs set up with vterm, getting SSH set up. So we got our prompt, our shush password set up in GNOME. We've got Firefox set up and all pre-configured with all our extensions. We've got Widevine DRM enabled. We've got nvenc encoding set up in OBS. Hardware acceleration for mpris. So I've got everything set up. The only thing I've got to look into is the transmission torrent client, but apart from that, I've got absolutely everything set up and working. There's a few tweaks, as a few things that will bite you. Remember, there's no user local bin. You can put your scripts in your bin directory in your home and run them with the full path. That will work. Remember, there's no bin bash, so you need to use user bin environment bash. Yeah, if you're running bash scripts, if you're running shell scripts, they're fine. Bin sh is fine. So any bin sh, anything with a shebang of bin sh will work fine, but anything else you'll need to change. So those are just some of the issues that I've come across, but there were a few teething troubles, and it can be difficult sometimes searching for things as to why they're not working. There's documentation for all the options and stuff, but not so much about setting things up, like, okay, how do I set up my SSH keys and get them working with the GNOME keyring? And again, remember in the configuration .nix, let me just switch back, just get NixOS boot. I think it was configuration, yeah. So two things you need to, couple of things you need for the SSH. Again, you need, you want services, open SSH enable, and also, where was it? SSH start agent equals true. And in our home manager, did we have SSH? Yeah, we had GNOME services, GNOME keyring enabled true, DPG, and the systemd shush authentication socket as well. So those are all the things that you can get set up with NixOS and Home Manager. And yeah, once you get it working, I think it's going to be difficult to go back having all this stuff set up. I think having to set these things up manually, I don't think I want to go back and do that anymore. So having, not only have you got the advantage of rolling back software and everything, but having everything pre-configured, including the browser and the desktop, is just pretty awesome. So I'll put links to all this under the video, and that's all for now.